Tell us a little bit about what you saw and being able to relay that message to Cora when you watched Kimbrel pitch and kind of help out so he wasn't tipping his pitches.
So tipping pitches, we hear about it all the time.
People at home understand what tipping pitches is all about.
It's amazing.
And that's remarkable.
Alex, I'd like you to weigh in on one of the great social questions plaguing our times.
I'm happy to. You know me, social guy.
You're kind of like the podcast version of the New York Times ethicist. That's how I think of you.
Hey, dear Alex.
That
right
guy gets
you.
anonymity, though, I think. Not you. You're putting your name to it.
That's right, I am. Oh, this is on the internet forever. I'm saying it with my chest. You know, I'm not hiding behind anonymity, monimonides.
That's a joke that only some people will get and that you are making before the podcast started, which is exactly how they tell you to do the pod.
That's right, they do. What can I do for you, Bobby? How can I help?
Where are you at on tipping culture in America? Like when they spin that screen around for you, you gotta let people know. Like, what are you supposed to do? Now, tread lightly though, because we have a news story coming up.
Yeah.
Where this is going to be the central question involved here.
A bit of a landmine of a question to open the.
Oh, look, the devil got him. The devil, he was going to answer it honestly, and then the devil came, stopped him from speaking his truth.
They don't want the people to hear.
A goal of mine is that don't have to edit this podcast anymore. It's that every mistake, everything, we just keep it rolling. We roll straight through it.
It's all part of the show.
It's all part of the show.
I'm on board with that, to be clear.
That will make it feel less crazy for sure. People will definitely understand the pod more if we start doing that.
I think so as well. They will appreciate the 30-second pauses while one of us gathers our thoughts.
One of us.
One of us. Not saying who.
All right, so solve this whole tipping situation, dude.
Well,
tipping pitches. We're the perfect pod to weigh in.
Well, I was gonna make a joke about that. Now I can't even use that to deflect from the actual question that you just asked me.
Right, because we don't edit anymore, so I can't edit that joke out and let you have it.
No, exactly. You took it. It was out there for the taking. You took it.
It's
tipping
like a 50-50
culture
ball in basketball. Like, grab that rebound, dude. That joke is right there for you.
I think tipping culture's gone too far.
Oh.
But I'm not going to say which direction it's gone too far in.
Okay.
That's where I stand on that. I don't know what you want me to say. When they flip it around, when they flip that little iPad around, I say, do the numbers go higher? Please make the numbers go higher.
Have you ever accidentally typed in the wrong amount? Like, have you ever, been trying to tip $1 and tipped $10?
No.
You just got to charge that one to the game if that happens. Yeah.
Oh yeah. If that's like, you deserve that. That's what happens. That's part of this transaction. A little rounding error. I'll take it.
I think that, part of the problem with the tipping situation.
Right.
100% agree. No, I think part of the problem is that it's all happening digitally now. So you have no way of knowing where that money is going.
Right.
But when it was a tip jar and you put cash in the tip jar, you knew they were going to take that money and spread it out to all of the people at the end of their shift.
I hoped, at least. I suppose I couldn't say I knew with certainty.
Did you think that like a manager was going to come through and take the money out of the tip jar? Don't you think that the employees would have revolted about that?
I suppose, but I don't know. Small business owners get away with a lot.
This is true. So have you ever worked at a job that had a physical cash tip jar? It makes for an interesting social situation at the end of people's shift.
Right. Yeah. No, I haven't. In the only job I had where tipping would have come into play, we were not allowed to take tips. There was no mechanism for us to receive tips. People would ask. They would say, "Can we tip you?" And we'd say, We'd say, sorry, no.
It's crazy that you worked at the only strip club that didn't take tips.
I was up there being like, what am I doing this for if you can't even throw ones at me?
Are you talking about Starbucks?
Yes, I'm talking about Starbucks. Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you weren't allowed to personally take tips, but they took the tips on the register.
No, there was no mechanism for it. They have introduced it since I worked there. But
They didn't take tips at all when you worked there?
No.
That's crazy. You were getting screwed.
Yes,
Howard,
I
what
know.
the fuck?
I know. See, but here's the thing, right? What did I do? I took it. I laid down and took it. I said, Howard Schultz, you're right. I don't deserve tips.
I thought you meant you took the tip. Like someone was trying to give you cash and you took it anyway.
Well, there was an elderly gentleman who I guess I had made an excellent cup of Joe for him, and so he called me down to the end and slid a $5 across the table and said, "Here, this is for you." And I was like, "I don't think I could take this." And he was like, "Take it." I was like, "All right, brother, I appreciate it." So you know what? That's Howard Schultz didn't need a consent to that.
Actually, I have Howard in the room right now. He's asking me to give him that $5 back out of Basie Wagner Productions. Did you ever consider, how well did you know what Howard Schultz looked like? Were you certain that this man was not Howard Schultz testing you?
That's a really good point. I don't know that
It's like Undercover Bosses, except instead of them doing the job and realizing how hard it is. No, it's still Undercover Bosses, but they're undercover for things like punishing employees.
Right. Just setting like traps everywhere, honeypot situations.
Yeah, exactly.
I think
that's crazy that you worked at Starbucks before the tip situation.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, I feel like Starbucks is the central point of the arguments, because it's like, oh, they poured coffee into a cup and then they spin it around. Tipping culture, which by the way had been, on the iPad situation, had been happening at normal coffee shops around our coastal elite cities for years by this point, finally had spread to the Starbucks and the Dunkins of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the conversation really blew up.
Yeah.
But you were right in there right in the last second.
I really was. Yeah. Damn. We started something, frankly.
You could have had a house by now with all those tips.
Except for all the oat lattes I'm buying. And Avo toast and
we were just shortening it to Avo toast. Now you're not even calling it avocado toast. That's awesome. Okay, well, thanks for weighing in. You didn't really answer the question, but I appreciate it.
I don't think I will. What do you mean? What do you mean? Like take on the tipping? Yeah, tip. Oh, great. It's so inconvenient to pay $1 more.
Yep.
For a thing.
I'm with you. It is inconvenient. Don't do it.
Oh my god.
I'm just kidding. Always tip. Obviously. Tip 20%, tip $2, tip $1. Who cares? Just do it. If you're not gonna miss it, give it. Who cares?
Mm-hmm.
That's my take.
If I didn't want to tip, then I would have made my coffee at home. I would have made it for myself.
Yourself.
I do. I say, you know what? Buy yourself something nice with this, and I take the dollar from my front pocket and put it in my back pocket.
This was actually my way of backdooring this into a finance podcast. Every time you do something for yourself that you would tip for, you put $5 away in a jar.
Ooh.
Look at that. Then you have savings. That compounds day over day. Look at that. That compounds week over week, month over month. Look at you, year over year. 5 years from now, you know what? You just bought a house in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm. Right next to young Steve.
Exactly.
That's the neighborhood. That's the neighborhood I'm going.
Steve Cohen's neighborhood now because you tipped yourself.
Exactly. That's, you know what? I love that motto. Tip yourself.
Tip yourself. Exactly. We got some interesting things to talk about on today's podcast. We're going to talk more about tips, if you can believe it. We're going to talk about private equity and their stake in our beloved hometown, small market, New York Yankees. They just need a little bit of extra cash on hand. And then we're going to go to a conversation that we had with friends of the show, Hannah Kaiser and John Becker. This is our first installation of what we're calling the Quarterly Labor Roundtable. This is where we gather friends from the industry who have different vantage points on the labor situation, and we talk to them about some of the topics at hand. It's a way of corralling our conversations so that we don't spend 35 minutes every single week repeating ourselves. It was a really great conversation.
Although we're known to do that, and I think we're very comfortable doing that as well.
And look, that's the name of the game in podcasting. So
Exactly.
There's going to be a little bit of repeating ourselves, but it was nice to sometimes repeat ourselves with other people there to respond and see what they think. Before we do all of that, I am Bobby Wagner.
I am Alex Basin.
You are listening to Tipping Pitches. Okay, thank you to this week's new patrons. It's actually the last couple weeks, and I'm going to need you to hold tight because it's a lot of people. There's a reason we didn't do this last week. We were just waiting for everybody. Captured them all. Everybody who signed up for Sipping Pitches 2.0, everybody who signed up for the zine. I'm going to try to run through them as fast as possible. It's unbelievable to me, but the first two are named Alex and Alexandria.
Jesus.
I don't know what you're doing over there. You're doing some weird voodoo stuff to attract people named Alex.
Carry the flame.
Sign up for the podcast. Haley, James, Neil, Zach, Andrew, Matt, Rebecca, Amy, Malls, Grayson, Gabriel, Daniel, Liam, Seth, Ozzy, Katie, Andy, Justin, Eric, Julian, Duke, John, Zim, Craig, Dan, Adam, Matthew, Nicholas, Alec, Ryan, Alexandra, another one, Grim, Z, Sam, Courtney, Jonathan, Sam, Brian, Kartik, Caladine, Dieco Bros, Tommy, Davis, Sydney, Jeffrey, Justin, Mantej, Antoine, Daniel, Vero, Kale, Christine, Clay, Peter, Brendan, Kevin, Cooper, Lisa, Steve, Viridiana, and Rebecca.
Sort of like a modern We Didn't Start the Fire. Danny, Johnny, Justin, Joe, Sydney.
I apologize to anyone whose name I said wrong. Thank you, everybody, for signing up. It really means a lot. One quick note about the Patreon and the zine. If you signed up in the week between August 3rd and 10th, your zine is on the way. I just needed a little bit of extra time to write those additional email addresses, and it's been a busy week, but you will get your zine if you signed up by the 10th. So have no fear. If you still don't get it in like a week or two, just send me a note on Patreon, and we'll make sure that you have your address and everything in there correctly, and we'll figure it out. Okay, Alex, very quickly, two stories that we wanted to discuss, both related to private equity in Major League Baseball and minor league baseball. There's no frontier that is safe from private equity these days.
Except right here.
A lot of, well, actually,
yeah, sure. It's time to make the announcement.
I sliced away like 10% of the company and sold it off at a valuation of $500 million.
That's
we
500.
We're kind of in the Alex Cooper zone. It's like Unwell, Joe Rogan, us. We're all kind of swimming in the same circles.
What's up, tipping gang?
The fact that you know. Anyway, okay. A bunch of people send us this story about Diamond Baseball Holdings stealing tips from Brooklyn Cyclones employees. That's why we started the show with what we started the show with. As context, Diamond Baseball Holdings, if you haven't been following, they've bought over 40 minor league teams in the last few years. They're a private equity backed ownership group that wanted to that was sort of like given the blessing by Major League Baseball to go in and do all of this. They bought the Brooklyn Cyclones a few years ago. Maimonides Park is a cashless park, so all of the tips that are given to employees happen on the little credit card kiosk and go into some centralized system. And then Diamond Baseball Holdings was sued or is currently being investigated or fined for stealing these tips. Is that correct? Did I miss any of the details here?
No, I don't think so. This is reported by the city this past week.
That's right. My beloved city.
That's right. You know the city.
Let's go.
City. You know it. You love it. Support local journalism. Concessions workers have been missing tips from their paychecks since DBH. I think they took concessions like in-house as opposed to using a third-party contractor. And so you have a number of workers whose pay stubs going back since I think May show 0 tips when some are saying that, you know, you used to clear maybe $200 a night on a busy night or something like that. And a lot of these are like, you know, folks in their late teens and early 20s, like who are
been to a Cyclones
grinding.
Game. Yes. You know the people who are working at these concession stands. They are honestly, in my experience, have been one of my favorite parts about going to Maimonides Park is just the we'll say devil may care attitude that some of the concession workers have about charging you for items.
It's incredible.
It's kind of amazing.
It's awesome, and frankly, it's a reason that I tip them.
Yes,
because they're great. When we were at when we were there earlier this summer for the Tipping Pitches annual Cyclones meetup, there was I met maybe the greatest concessions worker of my life, who was just rocking it. We were like, "Can I have like a one beer?" And he was like, "Here 2." He's like, "We're doing it. We're doing a deal." And I'm like, "I don't know that you are." But I appreciate that. And you want to know what? He was like, just like, you know, get me on the tip. And I was like, absolutely. He was like, "Can you Venmo me?" And I was like, "Yes, I can."
Wait,
do
really?
that. Yes. Yeah.
I didn't know this. Wow, there's a whole conspiracy going on here. By this time they were aware that they were not getting their tips, and this is a silent protest.
Possible.
Of sorts.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. I didn't have that experience. Not the dude dropping the Venmo for me. I mean, they've been very kind and generous, and they're worked incredibly hard because there's not that many concession stands there.
Yeah,
and for a game that's busy, the lines will become very, very long, and it's high pressure, and it's really hot, and I don't know. They do great work. It seems as though Diamond Baseball Holdings has made some sort of, at least if I'm to be as generous as possible to Diamond Baseball Holdings, I don't know why I would be, but it seems that they've made a clerical error in how they've been handling these tips, that whatever third party that they were using knew what to do, and when Diamond brought it in-house, they did not. Whether we want to assign malice or not, it kind of doesn't really matter, because this is the private equity playbook, right? You bring things in-house, you stop paying for quality work, you stop paying for things to be done the right way, and then whatever consequences, whatever knock-on consequences that come from it, well, you already are so liquid and you have so much cash that you're probably coming out in the black anyway. Whatever fine that you're going to pay to these workers, that's money from 2 months ago. That's money from 3 months ago. You already reinvested that money, and it's already made a profit. This is how these companies operate. They just don't follow the rules. They just ignore the rules. They ignore what they perceive to be bureaucracy, which is New York state law requiring you to pay out tips to employees.
Right. Not do wage theft.
Correct. And then they pay the penalty, which is probably in most cases going to be about what they owed anyway.
Yeah.
And then the time value of money has them in the black.
Or maybe you get away with it, right? And that's part of the
Even better.
That's part of the bet, right? Is like, worst case scenario, I'll have to do what's being asked of me. Best case scenario, I don't.
That's the black edge, dude.
Exactly. That's the black edge.
You find creative ways to not follow the law. And then when someone finds out that you didn't follow the law, you're like, "Oh, it was an accident."
Mm-hmm. Oh, we didn't realize. Sorry.
Oh, you didn't realize you were supposed to pay your employees?
Mm-hmm.
That's like the number one law when you're an employer. I can't think of a more important law than that. I'm always stunned when there's like a wage theft thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that'd be like going out to play a baseball game and forgetting a ball.
Yeah.
It's kind of right there.
Right.
Employer, employee,
Right.
You pay the employee. This sucks. Honestly, fuck Diamond Baseball Holdings.
Yeah.
This doesn't like prove our grand theory that Diamond Baseball Holdings is going to ruin minor league baseball. But I do want to point out that this is the least evil Diamond Baseball Holdings will ever seem. As time goes on, they're going to continue to do shit like this, and they are going to continue to become more and more evil. Mm-hmm. It is a finite resource. They are just going to keep using it up, the goodwill that they've generated by coming in and spending money on these teams. It's going to be bad. Yeah. This is just going to continue to happen.
Correct. Well, I mean, at least this has to be the limit of private equity, right? So
Right,
it's
yeah,
like
just minor league teams.
at least this is where it ends, and it's not going to touch any of the sacred sport of Major League Baseball, right?
Well, Alex, I have some bad news for you. This past week, the New York Yankees took $2.6 billion from Apollo Global Capital Management. Am I adding in a word in there? Is it just Apollo Global Management? Do they have the word capital in there?
Well, there is Apollo Sports Capital.
Oh,
which,
but that's not what we're talking about. Or is that a branch?
I think that is the capital platform of Apollo Global Management.
Okay. So I merged the two ideas together.
You did, but I love it. It's all one pool of money.
Literally. I mean, that's how this all works, right? We put it all, it's sloshing around. It's going every which way. It's going to Hal Steinbrenner. It's going, it's going to the Giants. It's going to the Lakers. Who cares? Figure it out later. No, they took $2.6 billion. The Yankees took $2.6 billion from Apollo for a mix of debt servicing and equity into the team. Private equity firms are capped at 15% equity in Major League Baseball, so that means that Apollo can't own more than 15% of the Yankees. So whatever mix of money that went towards acquiring equity in the Yankees has to account for less than 15%. The Yankees were valued at $10 billion in this deal, which means that at least $1 billion of this money is just for debt servicing. It's just like, kind of, here's some money, Hal, do with it what you want to do.
Yep.
You had an interesting read on Patreon where we talked about this for longer. We don't have a ton of time to talk about this at the top of the show because we have a whole episode to get to. You had an interesting read that this was a potential hedge against a lockout in 2027. Have a little bit more free-flowing cash on hand, pay down some of those debts, not have to worry quite as much about revenue in 2027. Do you, after having read a little bit more about this and letting it marinate a little bit, is that still how you're feeling?
I mean, I think it's hard to say. I think also when private equity comes to you and says, we're valuing your product at $10 billion, you probably don't say no if you're Hal Steinbrenner, right? I think the added likelihood of a lockout is a greater impetus to do this kind of deal, right? If you are potentially looking at cash shortages over the coming year. I'm not going to make the assumption that that's the sole reason for this deal, because I think they're doing this deal anyway, right? I think that
it's just an added benefit.
But it is an added benefit. It is a nice little security blanket.
So someone's got to look out for the Yankees. It's great that we have private equity firms out there that are going to take care, put a little franchise like the Yankees under their wing and make sure that they're all right in turbulent times.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and this is frankly just the latest development in the role of private equity in the sport, but also by my accounting, the largest, I believe. Yeah. I mean, there are some other firms who have invested, firms like Arctos and Sixth Street, who've invested in the Dodgers and the Cubs and the Giants, and like that money is already in the sport. And then obviously there are individuals from private equity firms who have invested, but this feels like the largest pure investment from private equity in a team. I mean, someone from Apollo is sitting on the board now, right, of Yankees Global Enterprises.
Honestly, I'm surprised that they weren't already on the board. Like,
Hal
he's such a private equity type.
Yeah.
And probably like the most blurred line for private equity in baseball is whatever's happening with the Dodgers, because Guggenheim is a gigantic private equity firm. Mark Walter is one of the founding partners of Guggenheim, the guy who sort of runs it. But he's the principal owner of the Dodgers, but it's unclear how much he is backed by his other business enterprises. This has led to a whole kind of can of worms with Mark Walter that we don't have time to get into right now. If you want to hear us talk more about the Yankees and private equity and private equity's scourge on Major League Baseball, we did hit that on Patreon this past week in our 3 Up 3 Down episode. So head over, check that out. Maybe I'll put a little discount code for that post in the description if you really want to go check that out. All right, let's throw it over to our friends Hannah Kaiser of CNN. Make sure to be very clear about Hannah Kaiser being at CNN.
CNN Sport.
Sport, not sports, sport. And John Becker of FanGraphs to do our quarterly labor roundtable. Okay. We are now joined by a first-time guest in John Becker, FanGraphs analyst, roster resource, spreadsheet junkie, for our first time on the Tipping Pitches.
Yeah, thanks guys for having me.
And a longtime guest, Hannah Kaiser. Hello. Is this number like 7 for you on Tipping Pitches? I don't know. I haven't been keeping track.
It's the first time at the new job, though.
Oh, that's true.
Exactly.
Sports writer at CNN, Hannah Kaiser.
Yeah, which I know because now I have to get significantly more official seeming sign off, which was a little bit jarring to Bobby when he texted me.
I was like, you've been on the show like 6 times.
But you do need to email my CNN email address.
Yeah, I was like, are they worried that you're going to embarrass yourself more than we've embarrassed ourselves in the past doing these podcasts together?
I do SNY every week. And every week they have to introduce me as CNN sports writer Hannah Kaiser because this was a stipulation from CNN.
Wow.
So I'm just saying it a bunch of up front, up top. But CNN. Everyone go to CNN.com/sports. So they're getting their money's
CNN.
worth.
That's CNN.com. You could search her name on CNN.com and read the great sports articles that she's writing there. Thank you both for being here. We're doing our quarterly labor report. Quarterly is just, I don't know. It's like our own fiscal year. I don't really know if we're
starts
following
in June anyway.
Every few months. Yeah, exactly. But these are episodes where we're checking in on the state of the discourse around what's going on with the MLB labor fight, how some of these issues are progressing over time. We're talking to a bunch of folks doing sort of roundtables about their perspective, people who have different vantage points than we do here, where we are mired in all of this stuff all of the time. I guess like before we start, I would love to hear just like what your vibe is on following some of these stories. And maybe we can start with you, John, because you do an essential service for what we do. You actually look at the numbers and look at what these teams are doing year in and year out and create a repository of information that then enables the rest of the baseball internet to have discourse about things like the CBT payroll, for example.
Yeah, so like as a roster and payroll guy who views sort of everything from that lens, like that is always where I go with all of these proposals is like, how does this affect roster machinations of like how many times a player can be optioned or how this affects service time or what the league minimum salary going up by this much will do to payrolls overall. And then on the sort of like macro team payroll side, it's so much just looking at teams with big payrolls, teams with little payrolls, good teams with little payrolls, bad teams with big payrolls, everywhere on all 4 quadrants. And I try to read things through that lens of fact collecting without trying to get like too inherently biased in either direction, especially at this stage where it's really just throwing ideas back and forth and there's not really any finding common ground yet, and there probably won't be until like Valentine's Day. So yeah, I'm just sort of like
Chill
in that.
Just went up my spine thinking about Valentine's Day and reading proposals at that time period.
Yeah, it's a very romantic holiday for that. So I'm just like in this, data collection mode and trying to wrap my head around, okay, this proposal says this. What does that actually mean? Like I try to stop reading before either side starts saying what their proposal is meant to do, because what they say doesn't inherently matter. It's like, well, what does this mean in practice to team payrolls or rosters or whatever it is?
That's so interesting because I feel like these days I have almost the exact opposite perspective because I'm so much less granular. So the new job at CNN is all sports.
That's CNN.com, where you can find Hannah, who's writing sports articles there.
About everything, about all sports. And so that's different for me. Previously, when I covered the last CBA negotiation, I was baseball writer at Yahoo, just covering baseball. And it's interesting how quickly that has genuinely changed my perspective to being like, I know way less than John does about the current proposals because I'm kind of approaching it from this perspective of I only care what each side is saying, and I don't care what's in the specifics of the proposals right now because I'm like, you know what? Like, and in fact, it's been a little like I've been spending a lot of time thinking and talking to people at CNN about like when will people care? When will these proposals matter? When does this like? because I'm realizing like we don't need to do incremental coverage. Somebody does. John does. But like I'm like, okay, like if we write about like, is it headline worthy that they've proposed adjusting the draft in July or is it more headline? The only thing I've written for CNN so far about the labor situation was about how Rob Manfred talked about it at the All-Star game, because to me, it's more interesting what MLB is doing that fans are feeling, and that's like putting out the commercials about the salary cap or whatever, than it is the specifics of the proposals right now, just because I know that like those are not the proposals we're going to end up with. Like that's not going to be the next CBA. And so trying to kind of explain why that matters to a really, really generalist audience I find myself being like, oh, it doesn't matter to a generalist audience. But then I do have to get into this place of like, when will it start to matter? I was just talking to people at CNN about like, if we're going to do some kind of explainer, when does it make sense? Like, and even like parsing if we did an explainer in December when the CBA expires and the lockout will be implemented, somebody asked me like, how much would we need to update it by the time of spring training? And I'm like, well, that's a great question.
The better question is, how much would you need to update it by the time it publishes, probably?
Well, yes. But like, right. Like, and so I think thinking about it, it's been really interesting to think about it from that perspective of like, what is the time frame in which we might see significant movement versus like, what is the story that fans are receiving right now as it pertains to labor?
I mean, I did kind of want to get into that a little bit because I think there's like two separate tracks here, right, to this labor battle in a way that I feel like has not been so apparent in past cycles, right? And that is the actual negotiations and the proposals we get and changes to the draft or, you know, the cap and floor and all that stuff. And we can get into that. But then there is separately this massive like PR campaign that they are running. And it is ostensibly directed towards fans, but maybe not exclusively directed towards fans. And I don't know, I guess I kind of wanted to get your guys' take on that posturing from the league. And I suppose like what purpose you think it's serving and whether you think it is actually, you know, doing what the league wants it to do.
I think it is. If I post anything about labor or whatever, the response I most often get is which side cares more about us? Mm-hmm. And I've given that a lot of thought, and this is not the hot take that I promised, but this is a little bit of a hot take. I think in some ways
the tease in radio, folks.
The league cares more about, like, I actually do think, because on its face, the answer is neither side. Neither side cares about the fan. They have like a kind of like, you know, almost like fiduciary duty. That's not quite the right use of that, but like you know, when they're at the bargaining table, they can only represent their own interests. We've seen it in the past. This is the problem for a long time with the minor leaguers, was like Major League Baseball players could literally only represent like their interests at the table.
It's like a representative responsibility. Like you can't only think about someone outside of your
exactly party. Like in a very real sense, the fans do not have a seat at the table. However, I do think the league cares more about the public perception of the health of the game and like of the game. And so I feel like a lot of their messaging, this was what I wrote about. This is going to sound like an overly nuanced or overly parsing point, but I think that it's less about convincing fans that fans want a salary cap and more about convincing fans that the fight is a righteous one and that they shouldn't be too put off by the forthcoming negativity. Like, I think what they're doing is kind of trying to shore up goodwill for the idea that some games may die, but it's all in service of, like, I think that it's a PR battle in preparation for the fact that people don't enjoy labor fights. And so they're kind of trying to sell it as like whatever negative headlines about spring training games getting missed or the opening day getting pushed back, all of that is just like the painful growing pains of getting to like a good, like, I think they almost care less about whether or not fans care about want a salary cap and more about whether or not fans don't hold this labor fight against the league. I think
Yeah.
I think the league cares a lot about what fans think about baseball as a whole, and that's fair. That is their job. Their job is to like sell baseball to the fans.
I would slightly push back on that. I don't necessarily know that the league cares genuinely, like in their heart of heart, cares more about what fans think. I think that they more clearly see the chessboard and see it as an opportunity to get what they want from an economic perspective by pretending like they care. Like by weaponizing the fact that fans do have these sentiments and thinking that that creates an opening, an opportunity for them to break the players union, which is something they've wanted to do since the players union started.
See, I don't even know that they think, because there's nothing fans can do to break the players union. So that's like, I think it's less about like, even if 100% of fans were in support of a salary cap, which I don't think is the case, that doesn't
feels
really
like that actually, mentions though. I gotta be
it
honest.
Doesn't really benefit the league when it comes to the bargaining table. Like it's like in you know what I mean? Like but I think they care about not losing. I think that, I mean, Rob will tell it to you at the media stuff. Like baseball's in a great place. It is really thriving, and they don't want whatever they know they're going to trash the players over the next 6 to 8 months or whatever, and they want to get out ahead of that looking kind of ugly by being like, don't worry, we're doing it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like the league, for all of its advantages, and they have a ton of them in terms of like every owner has other sources of income. They have a bigger war chest, I'm sure. They have way fewer people to placate. They have the massive disadvantage of like the burden of making this seem worth it is on them, because they're the one locking out the players.
Mm-hmm.
And if nothing else, the players can always fall back on like, hey, like we want to play, they're locking us out. And, you know, the owners are going to try every method of recourse that they have to say, yeah, it's worth it to lock them out. We are doing this and it's worth it for the future of the game, but they have more convincing to do when they're the ones doing it. I mean, they're on the offensive here and the players are just getting locked out.
Yeah, I do think that's a really good point. I mean, I would imagine that there are two things really weighing on owners right now. And that is first, like, obviously 94, 95, right? Like the strike and what that did to fan bases around the league. And then the sort of the COVID, like, return to play stuff, right? Where you had players coming out in mass saying, like, what was their phrase? They were like, when and where, right? Tell us when to play, tell us where to play. And like what they don't want is that again. So I think that's an interesting point you bring up.
Well, it's also interesting because like the propaganda campaign is definitely targeted at fans for sure, because they know to your point, Hannah, I do think that they are in a battle over like what feels more righteous. I think that the Players Association, like in a previous iteration, I think did a better job of articulating the righteousness of their fight over some of these things and what it actually meant for the health of baseball, long term and short term. And the owners were just so nakedly greedy in those time periods and just like so bad at labor negotiations and like the PR surrounding labor negotiations. But now, since Manfred came into Major League Baseball, they've become incredibly sophisticated about how they talk about these things. And I'm not even just talking about since he became commissioner. I'm talking about since the 90s when he was involved in the negotiations. Things have changed. It's the reason that he is the commissioner now instead of some former owner or, you know, another like C-League acolyte. This is why he did the dirty work, both at the labor table and then also with things like steroids. But I also, in the propaganda campaign, I see a triangulation of priorities too. I see them almost like trying to get fans on board, trying to pick off players who are not so sure about how the union has been run, and trying to convince their own side, like trying to convince certain owners to be on board about potentially blowing up 2027 over a salary cap that will help some teams much, much more than it will help other teams, which is a tension that we're like, has not been exposed yet because the Players Association has not gone hard at it yet. But like, there must be division on that side of the table, right?
Bobby, I think that right now both sides are so far apart that it's easy to see them as like absolute kind of like diametrically opposed. I think that when we get to March, the thing we will be talking about is how unified is the owner's side, because you're right, their interests are so varied. Even from the perspective of like the reason to not miss 2027 is because of these big TV rights deals. Like, I think Rob Manfred, given his druthers, wouldn't miss 2027, even for the salary cap, because he cares more about centralizing the media rights deals than he does about like team valuations, because he doesn't own a baseball team. But the question is, which of the owners cares? Like, it's they're in such different places right now in so many ways, both competitively, and then who has an RSN, who has already come in-house at Major League Baseball and is thus very aligned with Rob's plan to get those teams paid versus the teams that are like, to me, that is the thing that I both need to do more reporting on and also think will end up being a bigger deal, is like, right, like, how much do the owners want parity versus to get paid in 2027? And I think that they all probably feel pretty differently about that.
And I think this is where like the sort of devil in the detail thing that I focus on reading these proposals will really come into play. Is the league is taking really big shots and trying to sort of overhaul everything at once, at least as far as their initial proposals go. And it's one thing to try to convince teams that a relatively tight cap floor system will equalize things. But then, like, how do you do that in tandem with telling, the player development powerhouse like Brewers and Rays that it's all worth it, but you also have to get rid of drafting high school players, which those teams love to do, and signing players internationally, which those teams love to do. And it almost seems like the league is attempting to go too far in the direction of like unending parity and such interchangeability that I'm not sure how you can get teams on board with that when, like, it is about the bottom line and profits, but also there are owners who, within their own means and within quote unquote what they can afford, like, do want to win championships. So how can you tell, Mark Attanasio of the Brewers, like, your entire pipeline is going to get absolutely shredded by these new rules, and it's all okay because your payroll can be a little bit higher.
Yeah, parody. Maybe it's a little too early to press open the parody can of worms on this episode, but like, I am actually really curious to hear your guys' perspective on this. I think we all are probably working under the assumption that like parody has been warped and manipulated in how it's been discussed so many times, and baseball inherently is a sport that is incredibly random, much more random than these other sports that we're trying to compare parity across multiple leagues. Like, even, we pick and choose facts when it supports our narrative all the time, both on Twitter and also on the podcast. But like, parity is maybe not really the goal as much as like perceived parity, I think, on the fan side. And undoubtedly, we do not have perceived parity right now. You can try to convince people till you're blue in the face that like, yes, we have more parity than we used to have in previous eras of baseball, than we have in other sports that are capped, whatever. Like, I'm curious, like, I actually don't think that owners give a shit about parity. Like, they don't really want to. It's like way more profitable for Bob Nutting to keep losing. It's way more profitable for like 9 owners to keep things exactly the same. It's this like middle group of teams that like wants to fake like they're spending all of the time and be given like a different kind of handout that I think the cap and floor system supports, right?
Well, this gets back to the owner faction question. Like, right, so much of this is going to come down to, like, right, it's hard to imagine Bob Nutting trading a season's worth of revenue for a cap when he's not spending now. What does he care about cap? Like, he's like, I'm happy to not spend and just like own the team anyway. And I understand that will affect kind of the franchise valuations and everything. But yeah, I mean, I think like a year ago, back when Zach Kreiser and I were doing the bandwagon together, we addressed, are the Dodgers a problem? And he said no. And I took the tact of like, I was like, I think that the Dodgers not like they're ruining baseball sense, but I was like, I do think that actually, in the same way that like this could happen in any industry, that one business can have both advantage and also success. Like, I think some of the success the last couple of years has been random because that's what happens in October. But then once you have that success, it does become self-perpetuating. And like the Shohei Ohtani of it all, where like suddenly now they have a whole new market for advertisers, and then also that attracts other Japanese talent that it could have gone anywhere because of the like restrictions on their salaries. Like I think that that baseball has a real Dodgers problem, but that some of that is randomly created or self-perpetuating in ways that are not governed by the CBA. Like Shohei Ohtani sort of choosing to go to the Dodgers because they are successful, because they do things like drafting and developing well and player development and blah blah blah. That like that I think that it's like they can kind of almost, it's like a escape, like a, what's the escape gravity velocity, where you can like I think that it's like they've almost like built up enough momentum from the random wins plus the actual payroll disparity plus the like unique once in a lifetime of Shohei Ohtani choosing to go there, that they've like kind of like escaped Earth's gravity. And now I'm like, okay, I understand why that feels like a issue that fans would have when they just sort of like take a step back and look at the league. So that perceived parity, I think the Dodgers issue with the perceived parity is a real thing. I think if the Dodgers didn't have certain advantages, maybe literally just Shohei Ohtani, like if he had gone anywhere else, but they still got everybody else and still were pretty successful, when fans looked at the league, I think they wouldn't be like, I'm super bothered by the Yankees having a big payroll. Like I think that it's the combination, and some of that combination is random, but that has brought us to this moment where like I understand why fans look at the league and feel like there's one real outlier.
Yeah. I'm curious what your perspectives are on like what quote unquote winning this CBA would look like for the players, because I think this has like been framed a lot in like a cap versus no cap situation, and that's fair, but also no cap is what we have right now, is the kind of like status quo. And I know there's like a lot of minutia and details in the proposals that have been tossed back and forth. We've tracked some of them, not all of them. I'm sure there are ones that, you know, either of you are aware of that we aren't. But I mean, if the players were to come out like on the other side of this, like in a successful position, do you have a sense of like what that would look like? Or is that like not even something that like you think is reasonable for them to contemplate, because the only thing they can do right now is like hold the line on the cap?
I mean, I think if I were them, the big thing I would focus on is that revenue floor in conjunction with like greatly increased penalties for, or at least disincentives against, not spending to a certain point. I think in their proposal it's like $150 million. I'm sure that's designed to get like negotiated down to a lower number based on the revenue floor. But like that's the big thing. Like a bigger minimum salary is always nice for the players, and you know, 5+ year players of a certain age hitting free agency earlier is an interesting idea that I think maybe the league had first. You know, all those other sort of ancillary things. I think the big thing is like just a greater assurance that the revenue pie will be allocated at some minimum amount to the players, not in a percentage form, because that's where it gets very hard of like what's the numerator and what's the denominator when you're determining a percent. But like, okay, we know that all teams are going to be greatly disincentivized against spending less than $150 million on player payroll, because they will all get $240 million, whatever it is, of revenue. And that gives the players a lot more assurance than like, well, you never know how little the Pirates or Marlins or whomever is going to want to spend. Like, I think that is the big thing, is in the absence of a hard floor, because you're not going to do a hard floor without a cap, and the players don't want that. You need something that offers a much greater assurance of minimum spending in tandem with a stronger redistribution of revenue.
Can I ask a question about that though? Like, from a bargaining logic perspective, and maybe Hannah, you, since you covered the last one too, like you can speak to this a little bit, but like the owners started in a crazy position. Like they proposed something that has not been proposed since 1994, the most traumatic labor stoppage in American sports history. That they did the nuclear option like kind of just on a Tuesday. It felt crazy to us, and it felt crazy to people who cover the league, but like it's gonna sit and like fester for 10 months. And I think it will become normalized by the time these proposals are actually being passed fast and furious across the table. the players' proposal felt reasonable and it felt logical to a lot of people who maybe think about these things a lot. But like, it's completely illegible to most people. These systems are so complicated in a way that a cap and floor is so simple. So fan animosity and the fact that they are the ownership side and have these inherent advantages is what gives them momentum. Like, what gives the player side momentum? How do they actually like drive that wedge? How do they get leverage on having that outcome and winning the CBA fight? Is it just like straight up the solidarity of the players and them coming out and talking crazy about owners once they actually get off the season stops and they actually start talking about some of these things?
I mean, I do think that it's very hard for players across sports to have the upper hand in labor negotiations, kind of because they're not asking for anything. But the the MLB Players Association, I think, has actually done like a pretty good job historically of like leveraging stasis, if that makes sense. Like, they resist really well. They do kind of project this solidarity, this like I think kind of their long history, and this gets at the kind of, they've been not doing a good job of messaging the what was the phrase that literally I used, the righteousness of their fight. They haven't necessarily done a great job of that this time around, but I think that historically they actually have done like a pretty good job, and both messaging it and then like personally sort of buying into it. I think also just sort of strategically, that is Bruce Meyer's kind of operate. Like, I think he, in the same way we talked about why Rob has his job, I think Bruce has his job because he has a very high pain tolerance for saying no. And like a very high tolerance for people for like being a pain in the ass and like a blockade. And like, that is sort of both the Players Association's current like strength and weakness, like this feeling that like he does not seem to be bothered by just being like, I'm just going to say no. And like, and I think, right, they could use a little bit of that, like soft pedaling the message or whatever. But like, that is a pretty strong stance to have, where you feel like, I'm just going to stand here and not move. And like, you guys can kind of slings and arrows at me for however many months. You can't make me take a step towards your side. But I agree that I was trying to think back to like even some of what they asked for last time. I was like, did they have more ambitious or audacious proposals early on last time? I feel like they kind of did, like, but maybe they moved off them pretty quickly. Or maybe it was that the things that they actually ended up getting were pretty, like the kind of the pool of money for younger players, like that was something that they could ask for that was tangible, that felt interesting. Whereas now, I mean, I think if anything, it's going to come down to, John was sort of talking about like that idea of a floor and the penalties for not spending. I think what they want is like some guarantee that revenue sharing receiving teams have to spend the revenue that they receive, whether like less of like a numerical floor or even a percentage floor. I think that their concern has a lot to do with like, and I think that in terms of combating the appeal of a salary cap for leveling the playing field, their best option is to hammer revenue sharing. Like, first of all, we already have a system for kind of trying to level the playing field. It's revenue sharing, and trying to get that to fans front of mind, which is like that the Dodgers make however much that could benefit your team. They will share that revenue, and we will try to make it such that your team has to spend what they receive. I think that like that's a messaging angle they haven't explored that they should, which is just like hitting people over the head with the fact that like, don't be mad that the Dodgers are so rich. The Dodgers being so rich benefits these smaller market teams. They're just sort of choosing not to like exploit that benefit to their fullest extent.
Yeah, my advice to the players union, if they wanted to win on that messaging, would be to invent a time machine, go back in time, and before agreeing to a CBT, force them to agree to a floor at the same time, like a floor tax. It's really hard to retroactively, transformatively change a system that you've already agreed to in now like 6 prior CBAs, and just be like, well, we're not going to change that top end of this, but you do want to change that bottom end, right? Like, what is the bargaining logic there? Like, what are they trading in exchange for that? Is a really hard thing. And my other advice would be to use that same time machine that they just invented. Go back and don't drop the fucking grievances that you filed against the teams that were pocketing that revenue sharing. They decided to do that at multiple different stages because there were a lot of social pressures on them to do that. There was a lot of like legal pressures on them to do that because they didn't feel like they could win those at that time because of the pandemic or because of other CBA fights, and they decided to prioritize this instead of that. But the grievance part of the CBA has not really been explored in the courts yet. And maybe you could say that the owners will just like grease the skids to win those grievances anyway, but that's not really how it always works. When like we all thought Tarek Skubal was going to lose his arbitration case because we think that most of the time are going to side against the institution, or they're going to side with the institution, and they didn't in this case. So I don't know. That's one thing that I, over the last like 10 years in covering this, is like, you guys have like a lot of parts of this CBA that just don't get enforced, that just like out of just conservatism, lowercase c conservatism, like these parts of the CBA don't really show up in day-to-day life.
Yeah, there's something to be said for like, do you want to aggrieve every violation or consider, things to be within the spirit of, competition or, making a roster move that maybe by the letter of like a uniform player contract or what the CBA says about good faith and yada yada is not like to the letter of the law correct. Like, do you want to aggrieve that? Like, no, probably not. But yeah, you probably do want to aggrieve the idea of a team is getting X dollars in revenue sharing and it's spending 80% of X on their payroll and pocketing the rest of it and all of their own money that they made. Like that feels worth it to me. And I know that it's like a Byzantine, long, drawn-out process that might take 4 or 5 years, but like, I think that's probably worth it in the name of like actual enforcement.
Yeah. So the players proposed this like the competitive integrity tax, as well as which great framing, love that, big dub on their part, as well as doubling the minimum salary for players. I mean, I'm curious what you guys think does more for them, because there's a case to be made that like doubling the minimum salary probably maybe directs more money directly to players than a competitive integrity tax. I mean, I don't know. I'm like I'm genuinely wondering, because it feels like there are a few different levers that you could pull here, and some are more principled stands that you're taking about competitive balance or whatnot, and others are very squarely aimed at like putting more money in the pockets of players who like are likely chronically underpaid right now.
I think they're sort of trying to like address the same core issue of like, we think players should make more money, which like, of course, they got the union in 2 different ways. One of which is on a, macro team level of appeal to the fans of the Pirates who are not spending enough money, and, maybe turn them against ownership to at least some extent and say like, okay, there is now this mechanism by which the team has to spend and we are funneling them more revenue so that they can do that. And I think that the minimum salary thing is, and again, this is something where maybe the messaging needs to be directly better, because I keep seeing people say this of like, the union only cares about the top 2% and not the bottom 98%. And I want to be like, well, the union is proposing increasing the minimum salary to a higher number than the league is. So like, how do you square that circle of, the league cares about everybody and it'll be great for the lower level players when they're not guaranteeing those players more money. Now it would be weird if the league came in with a higher number than the union, but I think the union is, in the weeds of its proposal, doing a really good job of fighting against that messaging pretty directly, but maybe is not like actually messaging against the messaging directly enough. And maybe that's intentional on their part because it's really early. I don't know. Maybe they just sort of want to let the league tire itself out with some of its messaging and then sneak in. But I think that it's sort of like 2 sides of the same coin.
I had a fan say to me, I think just yesterday, this idea of like, but doesn't the union only care about the top? Like their job is to get the biggest contracts. And one of the things I was saying was like, listen, I don't cover, well, technically now I do cover all the sports, but not closely enough to know salary cap sports. But like, I was like, I don't think that the salary cap would bring back the kind of like middle class baseball player, because if the pre-arb guys are so much cheaper, the teams who are looking to limit their spending will just lean harder into the pre-arb guys. And so I do think, and this is very much a messaging thing, obviously, yes, bringing up the major league minimum is just about giving guys more money, but I think that it would actually affect the like aesthetics of the sport, or like the kind of contours of the sport, because the difference between how cheap guys are before arbitration versus what they're going to make on the open market affects how long careers are, and whether or not guys can find work who are like just a, kind of journeyman type. Like, I think, right, like making it so that pre-arb players are not such a good deal that you're willing to build a whole team on them, even if it's going to cost you some in terms of on-field production, like kind of like narrowing that gap. I think that would actually materially affect how teams behave, because, and in a way that would be diametrically opposed to how they would behave under a salary cap. Because under a salary cap, like, you're not paying like journeyman bench guy a penny more than you're going to pay like your AAA bench dude who you could just bring up. You know what I mean? Like, I think that the kind of the way that the different classes of players are compensated does have like an effect on how teams actually operate. And John, you probably know that way better than I do.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I was going to ask you about that, because like, so the NBA and the NFL are completely stars and scrub leagues. Like, I think there are things about that sport and the rules of those sports that exacerbate that issue. Like in the NBA, if you have one top 5 player in the league, you can make a finals run. That like is so obviously not true of baseball. Like, we just watched it happen dozens and dozens of times, literally with the Angels over the last 2 decades, and with multiple different top 5 players. And so obviously it's not the same. But that being said, there is no middle class to the NBA at all. You either sign guys to the veteran minimum or you sign them to maximum contracts, because otherwise you can't trade them for each other. The way that their CBA is structured, you have to match the salaries if you're anywhere over the first line or near the second apron. So like, you're literally not allowed to trade a guy if they make different amounts of money. So why would you ever pay someone anything other than the bottom or the top? And that is exactly what will happen in MLB. I think that there is so much room on the lower end of the salary scale in Major League Baseball for there to be still a like sabermetrically inclined desire to build around young players who are pre-arb, who are making that money, while those guys make like 3 times what they make now. It's still going to be a great deal, and it will not fundamentally change team building for these cheaper teams like the Rays and the Pirates and the Brewers and, all of these other teams who like trade away guys who are 1 year away from free agency habitually, religiously almost, while still redistributing the pool of money that is going towards the players in a way that is like slightly more equitable to the actual output of those players. Because I actually do think that is a problem. The bargain of like, you are underpaid for 8 years and then you are overpaid for 6 years is like a bad economic system in the long run, and one that I think at some point we're going to need to address in a CBA.
Yeah, and like, I don't know that there's a great way to fix it, because I do think there's something to be said for like, well, teams like quote unquote need to get something in return for developing players, and I guess that is up to 6 years of under market control. But yeah, if you like triple those players' salaries and reallocate revenues such that it's like almost monopoly money to just pay those players 3 times more, then it doesn't make a difference to the wallets of the Brewers, the Rays, if they're just dipping into money that isn't theirs to pay for those players, and it's really beneficial to the players. And what I'll also say about the earlier point about like squeezing out the middle is that, there's things where it's like the row of $5 players, $4 players, $3 players, $2 players, $1 player, make a team for $15. Mm-hmm. No one picks 5 $3 players. You don't want 5 $3 players. Right. You're like the $1 player. Like, I want stars, and then I can get good enough $1 players. So, and that's how teams, I think, are often trying to construct themselves anyway. And then when you add in like, oh crap, we have to be under the cap, well, Paul Skeens isn't going to go unemployed because no one can fit him. He will just make less money. The pre-arb guys will still exist because they're young and cheap and good, and then that leaves the middle significantly lesser paid and potentially completely screwed out of the league entirely well before they ought to be or would plan to be.
I'm thinking a lot about like, and maybe this is like premature, but the future, the concept of the future, and namely like how much the sport is changing right now, like really rapidly from a like financial perspective, right? The collapse of RSNs and Big Rob's plan to, create this central, like, national media rights deal, the entry of like private equity into the sport. I mean, I don't know. I almost wonder, like, is this the last CBA where the players like have this much leverage? Like the sport in 2031 is almost going to look completely different from like the money that's sloshing around and that sort of thing. And I don't know. I'm curious if you guys have thoughts on like how much they are able to like even think about this kind of thing. Like, I know you can't prognosticate on like what a 2031 CBA might look like, but it does feel like an impossible task, honestly.
I mean, I think that this gets to something that we were talking about earlier, which is it might be the last CBA where they have the ability to divide the owners because of how rapidly the financial side of the game is changing, and it's not changing for everyone the same way. Like, I think you're right. That's a great point that I actually sort of hadn't thought about, which is that like I do think that kind of because the salary cap is on the table, like what differentiates, not to like make it too obvious, or you guys, this is not news to any of you guys, but like I think about like what differentiates, I've only covered one CBA closely. It was the last one, the negotiation. What differentiates this from the last one? The salary cap is literally on the table. Like we this idea of like the owners, they always want a salary cap. Why are they proposing a salary cap? People will say like, why are they proposing a salary cap? It's because they've always wanted one. Yes, but when it is on the table, the question becomes, when do they take it off the table? Like, and that is a question of how unified are the owners. Mm-hmm. So like we're just coming back to what we were talking about earlier, but like the thing that will shape this particular CBA negotiation is how long do the players have to just kind of wait and trade proposals and try to move as incrementally as possible before the owners are willing to take the salary cap off the table. Yeah. It's interesting to me that you sometimes see fans say like, I'd trade the 2027 season for a salary cap, because like, who's to say that if they missed a whole season of baseball, the owners would win, that they would get their salary cap? Maybe we'd miss a whole season of baseball and then they'd take the salary cap off the table anyway.
That's exactly what happened last time.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like the question is how, like the pertinent question with this CBA negotiation is how long are the owners willing to keep the salary cap on the table versus coming back to the current system and just being like, fine, up the percentages of the CBT, like the penalties. And that is, I continue to be optimistic that we will not miss a 2027 season because of the potential for division within the ownership ranks, because of what you're saying, Alex, which is that the finances are changing so quickly. You're right. Honestly, owners, if you want to take some, by 2031, you might all be in such a similar situation that it's easier to weather missed games. But I don't think right now, I think that the owners are probably in very different situations in terms of their tolerance for weathering missed games, whether that's because they feel like their team is on the upswing and they want to genuinely capitalize on some of that like momentum. I mean, I think about just like, I don't know. I don't claim to know his like positions on these things, other than I assume they're pretty opposed to mine. But like, for all I know, Reinsdorf and the White Sox is like, hey, wait, I don't want to miss next year. We were terrible. Suddenly we're good. Maybe I want to come back next season.
Well, something that we've been talking a lot about in the audit is that there are a handful of teams with a lot of debt. Rob Manfred has been very lenient about the debt servicing rules in the CBA. He has the authority to enforce them or not, and he has chosen not to. I would say I become less optimistic about not missing games, which is a stance that I have shared on this podcast many times. I become less and less optimistic every team that takes on new financing to lower their debt, because that is the kind of move that, like Alex mentioned on our Patreon episode last week, the Yankees taking almost $3 billion in money from Apollo is a way to have cash on hand that they might not have had because this was their only business interest. That is the kind of like dramatic financial move that potentially it's a bluff or potentially it helps them either way. And like Hal has private equity friends and now he gets to fucking hang out with them at Yankee Stadium or whatever. Like it could be a bluff and that could not be a reason that they're taking that extra money in, but it could also be the kind of thing that sets them up to do that. By 2031, they will have all gotten that squared away. Mm-hmm. So this also, I'm of two minds about it. Like this could also be the kind of situation where the owners have overplayed their hand. Although I think that the Players Association has not reacted quite as angrily as I might have hoped to the fact that they put the salary cap on the table. Yes, Bruce has been, steadfast in saying we will never accept this. He has been resolute in saying that. And Cody Bellinger had like a quote at the All-Star break about like, yeah, the billionaires are going to be billionaires or whatever. But like, if you put the salary cap across the table at like 9 months ahead of time and told the Players Association that you were going to lock them out in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s, like it would be a 5-alarm fucking fire. Like Marvin Miller would be on TV and
he's showing up with a gun. He's showing up with a gun. Like
exactly. Like, and not just Marvin Miller either, like players like Tom Seaver would be annihilating these guys in the media. And they don't do that anymore because I know I've said this on the podcast a lot of times, and like I don't mean it to be a criticism of the association, the Players Association necessarily, but these players, this generation of players, does not seem to have the same class solidarity, even amongst players, that previous generations did.
I don't even know if it's the class solidarity. I think they just don't say anything interesting. They don't say interesting shit. Like no, but like I've seen, like you are absolutely right about the fact that it is crazy to me that the players have the platform, and the idea that the owners proposed a salary cap while the players were in season and had the option to talk to the media 162 times in the summer and are choosing to not bring that up repeatedly is, I agree, a failure of their like labor solidarity. But I think the root of that is just their unwillingness to say anything that makes headlines. And it is like, I don't want to get like too heated, but I do feel a little bit like I'm like, listen, if you guys don't speak up for yourselves and then the fans are against you, don't be mad that the league put out commercials. You're the athletes. People will like, you say something incendiary, you don't need to pay for commercials. That's earned media, my guy. We'll publish it everywhere. Like, you know what I mean? Like it does annoy me a little bit when the Players Association complains about kind of the league putting on this PR campaign, because I'm like, your PR campaign could just be there's 1,200 dudes who people need to write about like every day for 6 months. We'd love a story. Like, does someone want to say, hey, I think a salary cap, or I think a salary cap's bullshit? Great. That's a story for the day. Like that I agree. I agree completely that like it is such a missed opportunity to not be talking about it in season when people are paying attention to baseball and when baseball players also have to say something to the media. Like, I'm like, every time you have to talk to the media, just say, I don't want a salary cap. There you go. We'll run that and we won't ask you how you're feeling, like Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge could come out tomorrow and do a press conference about how he thinks a salary cap is a bad idea. And then he wouldn't even have to, like, there wouldn't even be headlines that are like, what's going on with his rib? Is he okay? We would just be like, Aaron Judge, labor hero.
So the only thing I'll say about that is that it's my understanding, and like I don't know what, if anything, the union has or hasn't instructed the players to discuss or not to discuss, that because a salary cap and floor is not in the current CBA, it's not a permissive topic such that there is no like legal requirement for like a cap and floor to actually be discussed at the bargaining table. I know that like what you're saying to the media is different than the bargaining table. It's possible that the union is just being like very, very overly cautious and saying like, do not say the word salary cap explicitly because then you're permitting it to be discussed and then an impasse can be forced over that. Like, I think that would be extreme doomerism to the point where like I would be surprised if the union muzzled anyone or everyone from saying the word salary cap, especially since those words have probably been said. But part of me wonders if they're just like taking the, you know, sort of Bruce Meyer patented, just like keep saying no without going deeper into specifics or really seeding anything at this stage of the game tact.
But I do think like, I agree, John. Like, I think that encouraging every player to start talking about it means that you're going to get off message so fast. Despite the fact that like these guys stay so on message about one pitch at a time, you know, I'm really happy for the boys. Like that's because that's taken 15 years of training for them to learn those lines. And like bargaining is an entirely different thing and a very complicated thing. And it's like, it was hard for me to stay on message about collective bargaining agreements in media, let alone like a 400-page CBA in MLB that, gotta be honest, like probably 85% of players have not read all the way through. Right, exactly. And so like I understand the nervousness, but they don't really have any players like talking about this at all. Like I think the public doesn't even know who's at the table.
Yeah.
You can look up who's on the MLB executive subcommittee, MLBPA executive subcommittee on their website, but like those aren't people who are out there talking about these things in the media or on their own podcast or anything like that.
Marcus Semien is in the biggest media market in the country and should want to talk about something other than how the season is going.
Hey now.
Although they're, you know, whatever, break up the bets. They're suddenly on a hot streak. But no,
won 5 of 7. Yeah.
But no, I mean, I really do think that it is I think that the shift Bobby, you've identified from like earlier generations is one of how they interface with the media about everything.
Yes. But it's also, I do think that there's a piece of it that is what's undergirding all of this, but there's also a piece of it there where I do think there is an anxiety about coming off out of touch. I do think because player salaries have grown so much since local TV money came into and that's to Alex's point about how much the financial situation of Major League Baseball, the economics of it have changed so much over the last 20 years. It's like, this is just much less relatable when it was like players making $80,000 and people working in an office making $20,000. Now it's people working in an office making $43,000 and players making $40 million. Like this gap has stratified. And I think in order to articulate that with any, this is the word of the podcast, but like with any righteousness or like with any sensitivity about these things that have changed, they would have to allude to the fact that the billionaires who own MLB teams sometimes literally are the people who have made it this way. Like literally these are these singular human beings who have made the choices that have made it this way. And that's the piece of like the class solidarity thing that like I don't necessarily look around and see like a plethora of people ready to make that argument. Because like I don't even know if they believe that. Like I don't even know if most of the players
their political
are like,
persuasions. Like, this gets at the like they're not that mad at the billionaires, and they think that like, you know, their millions are righteous in a godly way. That they deserve to be making, you know, 400 times what teachers are making.
Yes.
And I think that's part of why owners are using fans as sort of like, for lack of a better term, human shields of like, well, it's not about billionaires versus lower level millionaires and 100,000aires. It's about the fan versus the millionaires who are making, in some cases, literally, you know, 1,000 times more money than you are. So, you know, the league is certainly doing a good job of that, of trying to be like, all the players make a lot of money. Not all the fans make a lot of money, and we're on behalf of the fans.
Yeah, and they've effectively extracted themselves out of that equation, by the way. Like, they make it seem like you are paying a lot so that it can go to the players, not you are paying a lot because the owners have set those prices. Like, they've taken themselves out of that situation, and plenty of fans are like not willing to look under the hood of that. I mean, Alex and I we've spent the last 6 years on the podcast trying to be clear-minded about that, and it's still fucking hard. We're still arguing the same arguments.
They've really taken, I think what's really interesting is they've taken the owners out of it, and they're keeping the fans, the players, and then they're doing a thing that I think actually the media, maybe we also all do a little too much, which is rather than talking about the people on the other side of the table from the players as the owners, they talk about them as being the league. And the league, honestly, like their popularity is high. They're trying to position the CBA fight as like the next new thing from the league that brought you the pitch clock and ABS.
Yeah,
And
they
like
are. Yeah.
they've managed to erase the owners from the conversation, and they're trading on the goodwill that the league has kind of garnered through, like, change that I'm in support of. I like it. Good job, guys. But right, I think and that is like savvy, and also I get it. Like, you're right. The league is kind of enjoying a moment of like fan popularity, and I've like, that's the thing that I've kept in mind a lot. Sort of when I look at their PR strategy, is this idea of like they're very much like, yeah, from the league that brought you the pitch clock comes a salary cap.
Yeah.
And then in that way they're getting around having to talk about the owners. And I wish this is something that I think the media could be better about, is like, don't call it the players versus the league. It's the players versus the owners. Like,
yes.
It's not like like Morgan Sword will be there, but like, it's not the, you know what I mean? Like I get it. The rules, they do kind of get tied up with the CBA, but the league has done some great stuff. Good job on the rules testing, guys. Like, good job on the rollout of the challenge system, but that's not a reason to support the salary cap.
The owners and the players are like more or less equally invested in like the health of the league, because more revenue is good for everybody regardless of how it gets distributed. So it's, like, to say that like the players are against their own league doesn't really make sense, because they're not trying to destroy that which gives them their millions and millions of dollars. They're just trying to, whether it's increase their cut of the revenue pie or at least not decrease it. That is a consequence of what the owners are trying to do. Like, the league as a sentient entity doesn't exist and shouldn't care where its money goes. It is just a thing that makes money. It is the owners who are trying to cordon off a larger portion of it.
Yeah. It's really interesting, Hannah. Your point has me thinking a lot about like the way that the league has effectively like divorced individual players from like the identity of fandom. I think that like the NBA has sort of gone in that direction, whereas like baseball has effectively stayed very regional. You identify with your team, players come in and out with some level of frequency, and like the players unintentionally, but the amount of players who have chosen to sign with the Dodgers has gifted the league an incredible PR wedge, like an incredible narrative wedge. It's not just Ohtani, even though like they've been blasting Ohtani out, and now there's this kind of like retroactive "wait, we hate Ohtani" thing that's happening with some weird fans. But like all of the guys like Kyle Tucker, like all of these guys who did not need to sign with the Dodgers but eventually did it because for a lot of other factors, has now made the players seem less relatable in a way. Like there's a perception that the players, I think, maybe haven't had to reckon with, that the players don't really care about competition either. They only care about going where it's best for them individually or personally. That I think that there used to be this perception that players wanted to win and wanted to win on their own terms with their own team. That is not necessarily there anymore. I don't know. A conspiracy theorist would tell you that that MLB is tweeting Ohtani highlights nonstop to make people dislike Ohtani, so that they seem less relatable at the bargaining table.
Can I share my media hot take?
Please.
This is my meta media hot take. I think, because it kind of relates to that idea. I think that people in the media who are left leaning and want to be pro labor feel the need to argue the merits of a salary cap and the ideas of parity and all of that, and not say, I want the players to have more money because they need it to be that like their cause is righteous. And I think that I feel almost the opposite, which is like, hell, salary cap, 90% of the revenue to the players. Like, I'm kind of like, why do I think I think no salary cap because good for the players. And I think that the people who produce the product, who are the people that the fans are going to see, who are the faces of this game, who are the reason we love it, that they should make more money. Like, I don't feel a parody way about it. I feel players make more money way. I wish we could say that as a media and then have a conversation, or because I do think, like, Bobby, what you just said about like, hey, what's up with everybody going to the Dodgers? Like, that'll sometimes get you labeled as like a league psyop in a way that it's like, no, I literally want to know why the Dodgers, without it being this kind of like, so you're saying like that that the players don't deserve money or whatever. Does that make sense as a take?
Yeah, totally.
Which is like, just lean into the idea that like, and this gets back to what I was saying about like, listen, if you are a completely neutral fan and you look at the league and you're like, seems like there's an outlier, it's the Dodgers. I want you to be allowed as a fan to have that thought and engage with like, is that okay? Is a super team cool? Is it okay if the postseason is random, but they get all the stars? Like, without it being treated as like an inherently anti-labor take, because I want to be like, by all means, give all the money to the players. But again, on a rules front, how do we feel about everybody going to the Dodgers?
I mean, I think that's why Alex and I have been exorbitantly clear by saying many, hundreds of times on the podcast over the year, there literally is no other option besides the players get more or the owners get more. There is no the fans get cheaper tickets.
Yes.
There is no third party that comes in and mediates this money or holds it in escrow. It's like literally the players or the owners get this.
Yeah, there's a big pie and you're not part of it. Like, you're not getting a bite, you know?
This is
So
the
like,
definition of a zero-sum
one
game.
side to get all the money, which would you do? As I've always said, I'm like, if Jerry Reinsdorf can get out there and make contact on 3 pitches from Tarek Skubal, I'm willing to sit down and have a discussion with him about the money that he, deserves.
I keep saying this to people because sometimes we have like genuine leftists, genuine communists in our mentions, so many of whom listen to this podcast and love it. And they're like, well, like, why are you guys stumping so hard for like the rich Dodgers? Like, why are you guys? Because the truth is, like, in an ideal world, I would like the teams to all be expropriated and I would like the players to all make a lot less money. But that's not going to happen without genuine political revolution in America. And I think that we have some like bigger priorities to take care of before baseball. So in the meantime, this like compromise solution, the incrementalist solution is give the players more money, obviously.
The only thing I wrote about this was about Rob's press conference at the All-Star game, and because it was like, okay, we're writing about the baseball CBA for a very general audience, I like had somewhere part in there that was like, remember, this CBA negotiation is not about whether or not teachers or police officers should make more money. Like, I need you to keep that in mind. We're going to move forward with talking about how we should divide up this billions of dollars. And like, one of the options on the table is not like, give it to the kids. Like, like, unfortunately, it does have to either, like you're saying, like, it's got to go to the players or the owners. And I think it should go to the players. However, I also think that it's fair if fans are frustrated with the current system.
First side to propose that. What do you think, Sean? Do you think that we could come up with a bargaining proposal that we're like set aside $200 million to go to funding schools in every city as a baseball team? How do you think the sides would respond to that? How would that affect the CBT threshold?
Maybe it would just make everyone look bad of like, no, we don't want, like, both sides would have to come out and say like, no, we don't want
fuck them teachers, bro. Fuck them teachers.
And it would put everyone
I throw 101 from the left, dude. I hate those teachers.
And it would put everyone on equal footing of screw the kids. And everyone can start from scratch with like, to use the word of the day of righteousness, like maybe there's not enough righteousness of, again, it is going to the owners or it's going to the players. It's not going to homeless puppies and school supplies for kids and, all of your favorite charities. But like those are the two sides of this table. It's not about ad hominems about other uninvolved parties. It's like sort of about the fans, but the fans aren't a party to negotiations. Like there's a lot of just ancillary stuff that like when it comes down to brass tacks and February or March, like, aren't going to matter anymore. It's going to be the two sides sitting at a table, no longer considering the outside forces or the optics or the fans or the messaging or whatever. It's going to be like, let's get a deal done. Hopefully that's in time for a full season, but whenever it happens, that's what it's going to be about.
Yeah. I honestly think the Players Association could afford to be more honest about that. It's like, yes, this is not a perfect world that we're living in, but the options here are we get paid fairly for the labor that we generate in this economy, or these guys who are already profiting phenomenally from even owning the team in the first place by not paying taxes, by getting public handouts, by their franchises blowing up in value and making billions of dollars in profit. Like, they get more of it year over year. Who does that help is a question that I think the Players Association has not articulated. We're not going to solve all of it tonight, but we
did our darndest.
Pitches, yes, we thank you for the good old college try that we have given it. Where can people find more of your work? CNN.com is what I've heard, what I'm recalling for Hannah Kaiser.
CNN.com/sports even. Yeah, I'm writing about everything. I mean, even
everything.
when everything.
Pop
all
music,
no,
food, blogging.
Just the sports. All sports, but hopefully more baseball now that we're getting into the part of the season where casual fans have to sit up and take notice.
John, how about you?
Unlike Hannah Kaiser of CNN Sports, I cannot be found at CNN Sports, but who of CNN Sports, you can find me at FanGraphs. I do some writing occasionally and do a lot of the roster resource stuff and the team payrolls and all that fun stuff that I hope I don't have to overhaul everything with a cap and floor, because from my life personally standpoint, that would be a pain in the butt. But yeah, for now, business as usual, fangraphs.com, not cnn.com/sports, but also go there.
Yeah.
I'm like, now I'm wondering, I'm like, is it sport or sports? Because when I started
no. We'll put the link in the description either way. Just click the link.
Okay,
oh my God.
No ads.
That's so British of them.
That is,
yeah.
Wow,
do you write like Premier League stuff now?
That actually that does reflect the fact that it was very British when prior to them hiring some US based digital writers.
Thank you both so much. John, since this is your first time on the podcast, I just want to say thank you on air for all of the great work that you've done on Roster Resource. It has enabled us to talk out of our ass so many times on this podcast and then save ourselves by actually looking up the facts to back it up. So thank you for your great work. It has contributed phenomenally to this show.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys.
Pleasure having you both on. We really appreciate it.
Thanks to Hannah. Thanks to John. Thanks to you, Alex. Would you tip yourself for this performance today?
Ooh.
20%? 18%? 25%?
I'm doing like 15 max.
You're going Gen X mode. You're like 15 and get out of here.
Exactly. You didn't do jack shit today.
You could be better next time.
No, but I would tip our guests.
Oh,
25%. How about that?
Wonderful. Our guests that we didn't pay. Our guests who came here and gave us their time for free. Thank you for listening to another episode of Tipping Pitches. If you like what you heard and you want more, patreon.com/tipping pitches. We have episode 3 of The Audit coming out later this week, as well as maybe some fun accoutrement over at Patreon. Maybe some writing. I've been drafting up a couple of thoughts for some newsletters, diving deeper into the topics that we don't have time to get into on the podcast, such as what does it actually mean to be a sports fan in the age of private equity?
Ooh.
Existential stuff.
Seriously.
Philosophical stuff.
I don't know. I can't wait for you to tell me, Bobby.
Check that out over on patreon.com/tipping pitches. We will be back on Patreon later this week, and we'll be back with the Dodgers Myths Busted Part 2 in 1 week's time. We'll see you then.
Hello, everybody. I'm Alex Rodriguez. Tipping Pitches.
Tipping Pitches.
This is the one that I love the most.
Tipping Pitches.
So we'll see you next week. See ya!